Arizona Republicans' audit of 2020 election ballots is nearing a close. Private contractors are finished reviewing nearly all of the 2.1 million ballots from Maricopa County. That county is home to 60% of Arizona's population. It was ordered by state Senate Republicans after a government-run recount confirmed President Biden's victory in the state. No issues were found in election equipment, now being examined again. CBSN Washington reporter Cailtin Huey-Burns joins me now with more. Hi there, Cailtin. So help us understand where this audit stands right now and what they've determined after looking at all of those ballots.
Hi, Elaine. Well, they've been counting these ballots for about almost 2 months there in Phoenix, and they're looking specifically at Maricopa County, which is the largest county in Arizona. As you've mentioned, this is a partisan exercise. The reason that this is going on, despite several other audits that have already been done, including audits on the election equipment itself, this was a case where Senate Republicans were able to get a court order to subpoena the ballots, about 2.1 million of them, and about 400 voting machines. This is against the will of Republican election officials in Maricopa County and against the will of election officials across the state. And what's significant about this, too, is that they've taken the ballots out of the traditional custody of the traditional chain of command, which is really important here. So this is a partisan exercise, and they haven't really been transparent about what exactly they're looking for. So what they'll find, we're not quite sure the way in which they've been looking at these ballots. What we do know, however, is that this will do nothing to actually change the results of the election which Biden won in Arizona.
So if that is the case, what is the purpose of this investigation and what impact is it having nationally?
Well, that's the really important thing here. So even though whatever they come up with, and we're expecting them to have some kind of result later this summer, whatever they come up with won't do anything to change the results. But it has really had an impact on lifting these unfounded claims about the election across the country and amplifying them. It has had a devastating effect to that regard. And what has been interesting to see is that lawmakers from other states, places like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Georgia, they've traveled to Arizona to look at this so-called audit and try to replicate it back in their states. It's going to be a difficult thing to do, but it does show the ways in which what is happening here in Arizona is amplifying these unfounded claims about the election, and that has been driven by the former President Trump, who has continued even 6 months after the results were determined, the election has been certified, Biden is president. The former president continues to undermine the results of the election and has found some favor among Republicans at the base level, but also state lawmakers as well. And so that's been the kind of national impact of what's been happening in Arizona.
So against that backdrop, Democrats are working towards federal voting law changes. West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin is trying to find bipartisan support for a voting rights bill after rejecting his own party's proposal. What's the latest on that, Cailtin?
That's right. Well, this week, Manchin came back and said that he could support a couple of things. One, in that broad sweeping bill. One would be to have early voting, about 15 days of early voting. That's in the bill. He said he could also support automatic voter registration and making Election Day a federal holiday. But he also wants to see some kind of voter ID requirement as part of this legislation as well. Now, this seems like a big deal for someone like Manchin, who said that he wouldn't support the original proposal, to come back and say, look, here are the things I can support. There have been Democrats, especially those working on this issue, who have been welcoming Manchin coming around. And even though it has some ID requirements, which Democrats have traditionally been opposed to, and again, the devil's in the details what exactly that looks like, they have welcomed that. But this is not going to get any support support from Republicans. In fact, Mitch McConnell and Republicans came out today and said just that even though Manchin has come around here and is offering some kind of compromise, McConnell called the bill a rotten core, essentially, and they see it as a federal takeover of elections. So this is not going to win any bipartisan support, but it is going to perhaps try to keep Democrats together as they approach a vote on this bill as early as next week. Chuck Schumer said he plans for a vote on Tuesday.
Well, I want to take a step back, Cailtin, and look at the impact surrounding the disinformation about the election, because many poll workers say that they're being threatened because of their job. And about half of the respondents surveyed by the Brennan Center say that social media is making their work more difficult. As someone who's covered a lot of these challenges and recounts, what do you think is driving this threatening atmosphere?
Some really troubling developments from that Brennan Center survey. And what has been driving this, of course, is the former president and his unfounded claims about the election, continuing to spread lies about the election and trying to encourage people across the country, and especially lawmakers in some of these states, to try to continue to undermine the results that have already been certified. As you mentioned, the social media has been a platform for that. The former president continues to release statements about every week, continuing to claim the election was rigged. Of course, he's been promoting the Stop the Steal kind of mantra. And what we've also seen, however, and this was pointed out in the Brennan Center survey, is that in state legislatures, as they are responding to this, Republican state legislatures pushing forward legislation to put some restrictions on voting, they've also tried to weaken some of the election officials and the powers of election officials. But what is really troubling here is that there is already a difficulty in recruiting people to work elections. And when we talk about election officials, yes, we're talking about secretaries of state and people at the high levels, but we're also talking about kind of your average poll worker, your neighbor who volunteers to help out with elections. We saw in the last cycle that it was difficult to recruit people to do that work, and that is what is coming out of this survey, and that's what's concerning to people that we've talked to in our reporting, is that this will deter people from wanting to serve and help out with elections and kind of perform this public service that is so important, in addition to everything it does to undermine the integrity of the election.
Right. It is troubling to hear this. Cailtin Huey-Burns for us. Cailtin, thank you very much.
Thank you.